Good morning or good afternoon, depending on geographical location and time zone. Welcome back to Oliver's Greenhouse. I hope everyone's feeling suitably fat after Christmas. I know I am. Pretty much managing to see my body weight in festive food, especially cheese, so I'm feeling pretty bloated. I haven't been out in the greenhouse in a while, so I've come out today, have a bit of a clear up and also throw a load of stuff out, because actually there's a lot of stuff in here I'm just not going to do anything with. And some of you, I've mentioned, I've had a bit of an aphid outbreak as well. Everything's been doused with neem constantly, basically, which has really brought numbers down, but I'm still finding a few of the little sods here and there. So what I thought I'd do is I've taken most of the heavily infected plants, or the plants which I keep seeing outbreaks on, and I'm just going to chuck a load out. Most of it's just young sundews and stuff I was growing on in trays that are up here. And to be honest, I've got so many seeds, I don't really know what to do with them. So, and I need to make some space because we're going to be putting the propagator in here quite soon. So it's been a good excuse to actually just chuck some stuff out and then neem everything all over again. So there's some stuff I'm going to save. There are some real sentimental value plants, like some of my first sundews, which have got some aphids on, so I'll be unpotting those and giving them a good spray off in the sink, washing all the aphids off them if there are any on there, giving them a nice douse of neem again, and then repotting them up in the hope that they will recover and we'll end up with some nice non-infected plants again. It's definitely the worst aphid outbreak I've had in the greenhouse since I've been running it. They seem to be super prolific, usually 2 or 3 goes with the neem, and that's it, they're game over, you know, after about a week. But they seem to be resurging in numbers at the moment, which is particularly irritating. So that's what I've been doing during the sort of festive period. I was away for a while, so I wasn't really able to make any content, but I'm back now. And to be honest, I think the greenhouse is just in a state, really. It needs a good sorting out. But I wandered out here. There's a couple of things which are in flower and aren't heavily infected with aphids that I think we can have a look at. Strangely enough, all the orchids are completely clear. It's just the carnivorous plants. They love the vascular softness of a carnivorous plant, whereas the rest of the orchids and the nepenthes have been completely clear. I did see some on this the other day, but I just nuked it with neem, and I've been keeping an eye on it. I haven't seen anything on it since, so que sera. This is just one of those things. It's going to happen. I've been looking at those sulphur burners. I think that's going to be an investment I'm probably going to make in the not too distant future. Also, if any of you guys have had an experience you were using pyrethrum, I'd be very interested, because that's a slightly more potent form of insecticide. Basically, comes from I think it's not chrysanthemums, marigolds or something like that. But anyway, it's basically lethal to most insects. Spray it on, they get nuked, they die, they go away. You never have to worry about them again. But I've never used them. I've certainly never used them on orchids or carnivorous plants. So if any of you guys have, I'd be really, really interested on your feedback as regarding your results. So anyway, enough jabbering. What I'll do is, I've got some really, really interesting orchids to have a look at. One of which is really historical, so it's going to be worth having a look at and having a quick chat about. So I'll grab those together, find somewhere where we've got some half decent light, and we'll have a look at these orchids. Okay, so the first orchid we're going to be looking at is Rhyncho stele Bictoniensis. I've noticed this guy was out in flower this morning. This shows how long it's been since I've been in the greenhouse. And this has got, I didn't realise that this has got quite a significant history, like a lot of orchids, it's got quite an expansive history behind it. And anyway, so the orchid itself, it looks very much like an odontoglossum. It's got these sort of very round, oval pseudobulbs, and it produces a flower spike, a raceme, from a similar sort of location as well. And it produces these sort of sequential brown, we'll go for close up, these brown dotted and sort of purple lipped flowers. They're supposed to have a scent, but I can't smell anything. As far as I can make out, there's no discernible scent from being produced from the blooms. Now the flower itself is native to places like Guatemala and Mexico, that sort of region, where it grows terrestrially or epiphytically. So this guy can be found growing on the ground, or as with a lot of orchids, colonising a large branch or something up in a tree. So they are quite prolific in their natural habitat. So this was, I think this guy was collected in the early 1900s by a botanist called Bateman, who first brought it back to England in around 1835, I think, and it was first bloomed in 1836. This is only going off of memory and off of what I've researched. And it was grown at a very famous Victorian botanical gardens called Bicton, which is down near a place called Budleigh Salterton and Salcombe, on the way to sort of Salcombe on the south Devon coast. I think it's still the south, it's still just about in Devon there. And it was flowered there in 1836, and that's where it gets its name from. Bictoniensis being Bicton, and then blah, 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 blah. That's the prefix it's been given anyway. So it's got a rich history. Like many orchids, it's been reclassified many, many times. It started off as Limberglossum Bictoniensis, then it became Odontoglossum Bictoniensis, and then I think in 1993 it was reclassified as Rhynchus stelae. And this is where we look at it today, and this is how we find it. So the botanical gardens are actually still there, and they've got three very famous giant greenhouses, which are a bit like Kew. So there's these great big cast iron Victorian greenhouses with tiny panes of glass to sort of like create as natural a habitat as they possibly could, considering how long ago they were attempting to do this. So that's where that's the history behind this guy. What I'll do is I'll zoom in and we'll have a look at some of these blooms. Unfortunately, it's a bit interfered with because we've got the fan which I've turned off behind it, but I think we'll get close enough that we'll be able to have a good look. So let's do that now. Okay, so here's the flower spike directly in front of us. You can see I think it's got 4 flowers open at the moment. A 5th is just on its way. If we zoom in, we should be able to see a bit of some better detail to the actual blooms, because they're really very, very pretty. They've got these sort of brown, almost like res magenta-y speckled markings on sort of like a light green, creamy background. They've got a spotted throat in towards the calyx of the flower in here. It's got these unusual little spots on it, and then these big sort of showy pink lips. And they're not unattractive. I was kind of sort of hoping there would be more of a discernible scent to the blooms, but at the moment there's nothing I can pick up, unless it's one of those ones that either smells more at night or needs to be open for longer in order for it to sort of produce a fragrance. So yeah, a pretty little orchid. This was given to me by a member of my community, just because he had too many orchids basically, had to get rid of some. So it's currently growing all the way down here, all the way down there. Bit of a close-up of what the base of the plant looks like. It's growing in medium fir bark, a little bit of growth stone and some sphagnum moss, and it's one of my little 4-inch square pots that I've just made some extra holes in, just burnt some holes in. And I feed it once a week, keep it nice and humid. It does like semi-shade, doesn't like it too bright, so very similar to an Odontoglossum, and I would consider it to be a very easy orchid to grow. Okay, so the second orchid we're going to be looking at is my Pleuritalis. This is Pleuritalis restrepoides. I've always loved this genus. I've always found it absolutely fascinating because it's got some of the weirdest flowers in the whole of the orchid world belong to this species and to this genus. So I've always been very, very interested in it, and I was in 2 minds as to whether or not I was going to be able to successfully grow this, because as you know, despite the amount of effort I make in the greenhouse every year to control humidity and temperature, it still gets quite hot. You know, we're still talking temperatures up into, you know, about 27, 28 degrees centigrade. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's pretty warm. And these guys come from very high up mountain. Most of them come from very high up montane locations, so they're like really cool temperatures, super high humidity. I mean, this guy would be happy in 90 to 100% relative air humidity, basically all of its life, and it would be very, very happy in that environment. So I honestly thought I was going to struggle. Same thing with Masdevallias. I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to pull them off, whether they were going to tolerate the range of conditions which, you know, see the seasonal variation within the greenhouse. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I think I've only got 2 Pleuritalis. No, I've got a number of pluritalis and their subgenres as well, which I'm growing, and they seem to be proliferating very well, and I'm very happy. The Scaphocephalum is a prime example. They just go mad in my environment, which is really, really good. But this guy's in flower at the moment. This unusual. This is a great big Pingriclia cross Moctezuma. Pingriclia gigantea cross Moctezuma, which I just stuck in here, and it seems to really enjoy the orchid feed. I just feed this as normal, and this little carnivore, this quite large carnivorous plant, absolutely loves it, and it's really been gorging itself on fungus gnats as well recently. It's like insect central in the greenhouse at the moment. I don't know what's going on, but we are taking some concise steps towards bringing it under control. So it produces lots of kikis all the time, so we get loads and loads and loads of little kikis being produced on this plant, which is great because you can snap them off, send them off to friends, and share alike, and that's all wonderful. But it's a bit of a faff when you're trying to get the thing to bloom, because this thing has very, very, very beautiful flowers, only one of which is properly open at the moment, but I'm hoping to have an opportunity in the next few days to at least get a snap of this in full bloom and get it up onto my Instagram. So what I'll do is I'll have to reduce you down in height because it doesn't have quite the same stature as the last orchid, and we'll zoom in and have a little look at it and have a little chat about how I'm growing it. Okay, so here's a bit of a close-up of the plant. If I turn it around, you'll probably be able to see better. Turn it around without breaking any of the blooms off of it. There we go. It's probably easier to view it from this side. It gives you sort of an idea of the growth habit of the actual plant. So I'll stick in front of the fan here. So you get these long stems that produce a single largest sort of leaf. You can see the size of some of these as they get bigger. I mean, that's got to be 4 inches long probably. Maybe some a little bit larger. And this is currently growing in one of my 4-inch pots, ones I've just made some extra holes in. And this is pure sphagnum, long fibre sphagnum moss with some growstone in it, and that retains moisture really, really well. So it stays nice and damp, nice and wet, because these guys like high humidity, lots of water, but also the growstone in there's enough to capture enough oxygen that it doesn't go sour and manky, and the moss just grows like wildfire. There's a good look at the Pingriclia, which is growing. You can see the size of it's almost the same size as my hand, if not a little bit bigger. It's just about to flower as well. Let's get some of these manky old leaves off of there. So anyway, more importantly, you can see this flower spike which is in front of my hand here, and it's produced 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 blooms on this flower spike, and they emerge from sort of basically where the petiole meets the stem of the plant there. So what I'll do is I'll zoom in, we'll see if we can get a proper close-up of the bloom. Okay, here's a real close-up of what the flower spike looks like, and all the little flowers present themselves in a downward fashion, and they've got these very, very beautiful sort of red magenta-y sort of spots on them, and they're almost see-through, so you can almost like see through the actual petals of the flower, and they, like I said, they all hang downwards in this fashion here, so it's kind of hard to see. It forces you to have a good look at the semi-transparent blooms, but they're very pretty. Restrepioides, obviously the flower is supposed to resemble those produced by Restrepia. It does to some degree. The colorations are very bright and the patterns are very pretty, which I can see a similarity. As for the morphological appearance, I don't quite get it. I don't think it looks that much like a Restrepia bloom at all. But they've got this very sort of like cupped shape, so they're obviously, because they grow in obviously such wet environments, I am imagining they have evolved or produced a bloom this shape so that the water runs off the flower like this, so it's not basically taking any of the polliner with it or knocking off any potential pollinators. So that's that orchid there. Slow pan out so you can have a look at the bloom again. Okay, so thanks for coming along for that very quick look at some of the orchids which are in flower in the greenhouse at the moment. Just hanging the moss back up again. Like I said, just been very busy. It's Christmas, you know, it's time for spending time with the family, not for spending loads of time farting about in the greenhouse with plants, because you soon lose favour very quickly if you're hiding away in here rather than unwrapping presents with the children. But I've taken a little bit of time for you guys today just to get out here, basically have a look at some of these plants which are doing something interesting at the moment. and produce a little bit of content. So hope you've enjoyed that. Oh, just another quick thing for the pluritalis as well, grow them bright. They like a lot of light, high light. So you can imagine the tricky combination of conditions. You've got to get high light, high humidity and low temperatures. That's not a very easy juggle to do, so they can be quite tricky, but if I can do them, if I can grow them, you can grow them. They're not obviously that hard. So thanks for tuning in today. Like I said, we've got some really cool, exciting stuff coming up with the propagator. I want to get that in here. I want to get some plants. I want to get some seeds sown so we can really make the most of the greenhouse, especially, and really get a head start on next year's growing season. So that's about it for me from the moment. So thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't done already, please subscribe. Hit the little bell icon so you get notified if I do upload another video. And to those on my Patreon channel, thanks again for your continued support. And I will see you all again in 2018. Where did 2017 go? What a laugh. See you soon. Bye-bye.